Okay, first things first, to change the chain case oil, it's going to remove the muffler, and we're going to remove the battery. So the muffler, you have 4 springs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then to remove the battery, negative, positive, then the clamp. This hinges out of the way, and then we'll take the battery out. So we'll do those things first here before we do anything else. Okay, next you're going to remove the battery holder. So you have these 2 screws on the front. You have these 2 inside. You have this one on the chain case. This assembly with the solenoid on it, you don't have to remove, just wiggle it. It comes unhooked from the bottom, and that's not going to bother anything. And then you can get the other ones off. It's easiest next also, once you take that off, is to take this screw off, this bolt that holds the strap to hold your side cover on, because that's going to get in your way. It doesn't leave enough clearance to slide the cover open much. So those are the next things that you want to do. Okay, next thing to take off is this shroud around the reverse lever, which is fairly easy actually. There's one 10mm bolt right under here, and then basically it lifts up in that slot so you don't break it, and then you can fish it out of there without breaking this tab. Because if you wiggle that at all trying to do anything in the rest of this stuff, you'll break that. So just undo the one bolt, lift this up, and that shroud will come right off of there. Okay, so if you want to drain the oil, the next thing is to put an oil pan under here. There's a hole in the belly pan for the oil to come out, but there is no drain plug on the bottom of the chain case. There hasn't been since Ski-Doo moved to the XP. You do have a, this is a 2012, which has the old drain plug over here. It's good when you're all done to pull that out because it still has magnet on the end that can pick up filings. The easiest way to take that out without crunching it all to heck is get a 9/32 square drive. See that? It just goes on perfectly, and you can loosen it. Now it's a pipe thread, so as it gets tight, you know, the thread diameter pitch changes a tiny bit as you get it in, so it will snug up pretty easily. It won't bottom out. You'll feel it snug up, and it's definitely worth taking out and cleaning once there's no oil left in here. And then this is the new 500 milliliter port right here. So when you're filling it, when it comes out of that, you know you have 500 milliliters in it. But for now, all we want to do is make sure there's a pan underneath and loosen these 7 bolts that go all the way around the chain case. There's 7 black-headed ones, and we'll loosen those up as far as they can go for the next thing. Okay, next bolt to take off is this 13mm. Don't lose the crush washer that's behind it. That's the next one to take off. Now if you want to just drain the oil and you don't want to take the chain case cover off, you can just grab it now, and you see it pulls out very easily, and you can see all the oil draining down through the hole. So you can do that and basically just put a 2x4 under the ski on the other side to keep the sled tipped some, and then everything will drain out of this without having to take the cover off. If you want to take the cover off, we'll do a few more steps here and take the cover off. But if you do that, that's all you need to do to drain the oil. Okay, and so now if you want to take the cover off, there's a few more things you have to take off. You'll have to disconnect the speedometer pickup right here, which that's pretty simple. And then we have 3 more of the gold colored 10mm bolts, 1, 2, 3 hidden back there. So we have to undo all of those so that we can take this whole housing and hold it back out of the way some, so that we'll be able to get the cover out. And all of the 7 bolts that I took out are right there, and on mine they're all exactly the same length. And of course this will be a little bit different if you have one with the electric solenoid on it, and you won't have this lever, and you'll have a few more parts to take off, but it's essentially the same deal. So let's undo those bolts and go on to the next step. Okay, so I've removed the 4 bolts You have 1 back here, 2, 3, and 4. And again, they're all the same length. So now I can gently lift this up out of the way, and I can hold it out of the way with a bungee cord so it's not going to bother me. Now the next step is to, you remove the plug here because you're going to need to fill it with oil from there anyway. And I can take this out now also. And you're going to need to remove the linkage. The easiest place to remove it is the Allen right here. There's no nut on the back. It's very easy to take it off there, and you're going to have to take that off to get the cover out. So let's loosen that Allen wrench right now. Okay, so now if you undo this one bolt, it will let the fork arm drop, so you're not trying to fight all these linkages, and basically it will just pull right off. There's no fighting with it. So now that it's pulled off, I've unplugged this. I don't have my strap in the way over here. I can just, with a little bit of an angle, I can fish it up out of there. I don't think I can do it with one hand holding the camera, but trust me, it's not that hard once you've taken that off. Okay, you can see it's mostly a finesse thing. You can get it out, and when you put it back together, of course, with the bolt loosened up, it lets the forks move real easy. So these are the tabs that you're trying to get aligned, which is quite easy once it's all disconnected. You're going to get them on the other side of your reverse gear right here. But it's very easy to do once it's all apart. And you just want to make sure that you didn't, that no gears popped off or moved. And now you can, of course, while you're in this, you can clean it all out. You can wipe it all out easily. You can do a little bit better job than if you didn't take it off. And you can see there's really not that much to this chain case. Here is your, tension adjustment right here. We're going to adjust that before we put it back together. We're also going to take a look at some other things. This is a common part here that can break on some of these. This one all looks good. The chain looks good, and for the 4,200 miles on this, and I've changed the chain case oil once, it all looks really, really good in here. But we'll take a few minutes and clean it up, wipe everything out before we start putting anything back together. Okay, so basically we just used a little brake clean and cleaned up all in the belly pin and all down in the footwell, so that all the remaining oil can kind of be cleaned up, because you don't want that stuff leaking on your garage floor forever. And then BRP says to loosen the 17mm nut, back the screw out, clean all the threads up, and then turn it in finger tight. So right now I backed it off a bit, so you can see how loose the chain is because I backed it off a bunch. But now we'll just turn it in and see where we get with finger tight. So I can turn it easily now. I don't want to put a wrench on it. I can turn it quite easily. And if I turn it basically as tight as I can with my finger, no tools, and I'll stop right there, and I'll make sure I'll back off a little bit, tighten with my fingers and stop. Now what I'll do is I'll make sure that I hold this when I lock the nut so I don't tighten it any further. And you can see you have a little bit of play in the chain on the back side, but not a lot. It's snug. There's certainly no reason to have it any tighter than that. It's not going to jump any gears like that. It's not going to jump any teeth. It's not going to hit the chain case. You're going to be fine. There's no reason to put a wrench on this and tighten the living hell out of it, because your chain life is going to be shortened. By the same token, leaving it loose, it will jump gears given enough time, and then you're going to have a mess inside the chain case. Inside this chain case looks great. And it's really been trouble-free, and I don't see any reason why most of the rest of them shouldn't be the same. Put in the, I don't like to run the full 500 milliliters of oil because I run a lot of high-speed running. If you don't, you're fine with the 500 milliliters. If not, just take 100 off, Run the 375 to 400, which is what I run, and I have no trouble with it. It doesn't jump out of gear, no issues. So now the next thing is to lock this down and then put my cover back on. So we'll lock the chain first. Okay, now I'm going to put the cover back on. So basically you kind of fish it in at an angle. I don't need to jam anything. It will fish in there without a hammer, without beating on it. And now, as you can see, with my fork disconnected, it's real easy to pull this forward. So what I'm going to do when I put it in is I'm going to make sure, you know, once I clean it up inside there, I'm going to make sure that my fork gets on the back side of this. It's real easy to do with the linkage disconnected. Otherwise, people jam it up on this side and they wonder why it won't go in and out of gear. You know, you can crack the chain case. There's not enough clearance to crush it all in there like that. So I'll open it up like this, and then I can line it up on the back side of this as I slide it down, and then slowly the lever will come in. So that's the next step. Okay, as we get it aligned and down in there and get everything just loosely where it needs to be, I can easily, because I can move this anywhere I want now, I can easily make sure I get it on the right side of the gear, and I can look right in the hole and see I'm right where I want to be on the other side. Now when I push it in tight, this lever will go up parallel to where it was, 90 degrees, ready to put in the, ready to put this Allen back in it. So that's the big thing, is get it on the other side of the gear, and that's easy to do with it off. Now I can line it up and just push it back on tight. Okay, next step is to put in your 7 black chain case screws. There's 7 of them, they're all the same length. You want to put them all in so they touch the cover, and then gently go crisscross pattern, and you're basically closing up the gap of the cover. You want to keep it even. You know, I've never stripped these. People do strip them. It doesn't take a lot of torque, and all this stuff bends very easy. So you kind of want to go, you have some alignment pins, make sure that those are aligned good. You can easily with your hands close this gap up quite a bit, and then you want to go around crisscross with a wrench, snugging them up gently to kind of close this gap up before you do the final torque on them. But you know, take a minute and get those all snugged up evenly, all 7 of them, so that closes that gap up. Okay, so now you should have all 7 10mm head bolts on there. The torque spec for those is 89 inch-pounds. It's basically just enough to close the gap up, so it's kind of metal on metal, and it's a tiny bit more snug than that, and that's it. It's 89 inch-pounds. And on the reverse gear bolt right there, make sure you have the crush washer on it. The spec for that is 133 inch-pounds. Then make sure to clip your speedometer drive hooked up. So the next couple steps are to put your Allen bolt back on, and you'll see that once you get this all lined up, it'll just go right on there. You won't have to use any force. And if you look inside, the fork is correct. So just put your Allen head back in there. And then the next step is to use our square socket that we talked about before. Take our plug out, clean the oil off, remove our 500 milliliter level, and fill our oil right through here. Give it time to fill, run down, and then come up. For me, I'm going to run 355 and leave it. BRP says to run 500. So that's the next couple steps. Okay, before we put it all together, it's a good time here to just make sure it goes in and out of reverse, which it does with no problem. You can also adjust your free play. Basically, there's a spec of, I think it's 25 thousandths on the side of the cam in there, and you can adjust that with the turnbuckle here. But what it boils down to is when it's in forward, there should be a little bit of play. So now you know it's solidly in forward with that little bit of play that's in there. And that's about right. And that tiny bit of play also means when you engage reverse, it will be fully in reverse. So now the next step is to take our electrical water bottle bracket up here, put that all on. Make sure you use our 4 bolts here. They should all have washers on them, and that's the next step. There's 4 of those to put on. Okay, so we have our 4 bolts holding our bracket on, and those are all torqued to 100 inch-pounds. It's not very much. Now you want to make sure that you, after you fill it full of oil, you've put your vent cap, fill cap cover back on. aim this up into the back where it is in the stock position. We have our bolt back on here for our reverse lever. We have our speedometer pickup plugged in. Our next step is to put our our cover back on here over a reverse lever. Again, you pull the reverse lever down, then you'll fit it on there, put this piece in up over the top, and then slide it down. And it's just best to get this out of the way for any of that type of work so that you don't break it. But now you can put it in, slide it down, and then put our remaining black 10mm head bolt on there. It also has a plastic washer, so put that underneath and tight and get that piece on. That's what's next. And then after that, we're going to kind of work on putting the battery box back together. Okay, so we have the battery box all back on. Remember, your ground strap goes on the front one here with the star washer against the aluminum. These two are Allens. Inside you have an Allen close to the outside of the sled. Then close to the inside you have another ground strap with the star washer on the aluminum. And then you have the one bolt over here. Then it's simple as taking this and the solenoid bracket and just hooking it on. So next we'll put our battery in there. We also put on our side cover strap over here. Remember, this is an 8mm, and the aluminum goes on the back side of the footrest, and the strap comes around it, has a lock nut on it. So next is to put our battery in, and then we put our muffler back on. So we'll do those couple things, and we should be done. Okay, so now our battery's all back in. We have our 10mm head up here with our lock nut on it. We have our ground wire put up here with our other 10mm head. Then we have our positive here. So remember, on some years, this year in 2012, they have the accessory wires brought in with the main wire, and I just have one lug. But on some years, this accessory wire was separate, so you need to put both of them under the lug. If not, it will make partial connection, and that's going to give you trouble on the trail. So just make sure however many you have on there, they're all under the lug, and then you can bring your cover on down and cover that. It takes a minute. You kind of got to work it down through there, but it will go down and cover everything correctly. Now we'll put our muffler on. So the muffler, make sure that you have your gasket on right here, the Grafoil gasket. Make sure that the muffler tang goes into the frame right here. And when you get all done, make sure you wiggle it and it goes down through the two holes in the frame. Those are your main points. It's pretty easy to put the muffler on. Just make sure you get all those three things done so it's in there and secure and lined up the way that it should be. Okay, that's it. So we have our cap put back over nice and tight. We have our muffler on. It's locked into the frame. The two exhaust holes are coming out where they should. All four of our springs that we took off are back on. And that's it. We're done. So it has fresh oil in it. We've inspected all the parts inside the chain case. Our reverse works absolutely fine. And that's it.